The 4 temperaments in children. Just as the 4-letter type can be generated for adults from the questionnaire presented in Chapter 1, so can type be generated in a very tentative way for children from material presented in this chapter. The identification of preference must be especially tentative, for observation of children cannot be as accurate as a self-report of adults when what is at issue is a person's own preferences. The following sections describe ways the 4 temperaments grow up. The growing up styles of the SP, SJ, NT, and NF are described in that order. A profile of each completes the chapter under the subtitle, Learning Styles. So we continue with the Promethean, intuitive thinking temperament in childhood. The NT, baby, is probably rather solemn and likely to be a puzzle to those around him if they are not also NTs. He may be precocious, talk early, and learn to read long before he goes to school. The chances of an NT having even one NT parent is rather low, since this group is represented by only 12% of the general population. The NT child often experiences the same rejection accorded to the SP, but for the SP this occurs when he enters schools and moves through the grades. For the NT this begins earlier. Over and over, NTs have reported their childhood experiences saying, "I thought I was the only person in the whole world who was like me. When I was growing up, no one seemed to see things the way I did. Then I got to college and suddenly there were lots of others like me. I was no longer so alone." The NT child is apt to keep at a parent with why questions. Why does the sun come up there and not there? Why can't I fly like a bird? Why can't I have dessert before my vegetables if I eat both? Usually rather independent, the NT child can often be also a nonconformist, although he also tends to be obedient and compliant in matters to which he is indifferent. Just as the SP pursues his function lust, so does the NT pursue his curiosity lust, wondering what would happen if ... and proceeds to attempt to find the answer, whether his mentors approve or not. What would happen if I put my finger in the electric socket? What would happen if I put my bread in the water pitcher? None of these exploring behaviors are designed to annoy adults. Their purpose is to satisfy the NT's need to find out. He tends not to be the least bit interested in coming into conflict with those about him, although, if this happens as a result of his investigations, he is apt to accept these consequences impersonally. He is often a source of annoyance to his mentors, for he tends to be somewhat detached in his reactions to their reprimands. The NT child will quickly lose respect for those who are not logical in their reprimands, or who issue edicts which are not plainly warranted by the circumstances. Physical punishment is deeply violating to the NT, although his body as his world is a source of curiosity, not him in the same way the body is for other types. He reacts to physical abuse of that body with what seems to be an exaggerated response, somehow seeing this abuse as a violation of his nature. Dignity usually is important to NT children, and they are often described as prideful. Somehow, others often find this offensive and seem to take the NT's pride as a personal affront, which often presents a challenge to those around the NT. to bring the NT off his high horse. Parenting the NT mainly means hands off. The NT child needs an abundance of opportunities to experiment, find out, get answers. Shutting off the experimental behavior is likely to cause the NT child to engage in disobedience and disruptive behaviors, overt or covert. The parent of an NT should provide the child with a variety of toys, but only a few at one time, as opposed to giving in abundance. The NT child, as with all children, can easily become overstimulated. The NT in particular can be seen as intellectually precocious, and so parents might be tempted to supply toys appropriate for other children, which are inappropriate for the child's age and social maturity. He usually will enjoy books and being read stories long after other children of other types have turned their attention elsewhere. He is likely to be deeply involved with a new toy, playing with it for hours, contemplating its properties, and then abandon it and seldom again show interest. Once the NT child understands the toy, he is no longer interested. His enjoyment in being read to is probably a function of his curiosity, and through stories he encounters complexities which he cannot gain through his own reading, but which excite his mind. He may become impatient with the content of his primers and fail to learn to read because of disinterest, much to the surprise of his teachers. This curriculum stance, however, is the exception with the NT child. The NT child is devastated by ridicule and sarcasm concerning ability. He, more than others, is self-doubting, and he badly needs an abundance of success. He is particularly vulnerable here, owing to his early interest in technology. Well-meaning parents and teachers may ask of him that which is beyond him. He then experiences failure and is likely to retreat into himself. Seldom does an NT child respond well to negative criticism. Helping him when he asks for help, providing him with patient answers to his almost endless questions, giving him appropriate play materials in appropriate number, and giving him room to develop his own answers in his own world permits the NT to grow up with his need for competency and his thirst for knowledge encouraged and nurtured. Socially, the INT child can be somewhat handicapped, although intellectually he may seem precocious. Awareness of social interactions, which is so natural for an NF, is somewhat of a mystery to an NT. It seldom occurs to him to think about manners, and he usually is quite oblivious to the reactions of others. Often, therefore, the NT does not develop the winning ways, which often the NF, SJ, and SP display, each in his own style. The SP with his bubbling, happy-go-lucky cheerfulness, the SJ with his thoughtful gestures of service, often quite unexpected, and the NF with an appreciation of adult and child personality. The NT usually displays none of these if he is introverted. The INT especially seems at times unable, or at least reluctant, to express affection, drawing back from expressions of physical affection from others and seeming to have a shell around him, an expression of his self-doubt. Ensuring an abundance of success, providing sufficient intellectual stimulation, giving frequent encouragement, and coaching in social skills. These help the NT child, showing him off, allowing him to become an intellectual snob, allowing him to look down on others who are perhaps less intellectually gifted and therefore judged to be inferior, will not do much for him. NTs usually do well in school. They usually do not skip the difficult subjects, such as the hard sciences and the advanced mathematics. As the NT moves through his schooling, he can become over-involved in these studies, and as a consequence, fail to participate in school recreational and social activities. The INT, in particular, may be somewhat of a loner in the classroom, being highly independent and preferring to go his own way in pursuit of his own interests. The ENT may be an outstanding leader, sometimes in opposition to the direction taken by a teacher. Thus the two find themselves engaged in a power struggle. The stubborn aggression of the ENT over correctness of procedure is duplicated in the INT over the correctness of wording of ideologies. The NT child's capability hunger is soon attached to inner standards of improvement. He must meet these standards, however overdrawn they may be. One of his tasks in life is to come to terms with the fact that he cannot know everything, and that he must therefore set priorities. Both parents and teachers can and need to be of assistance to the NT in setting these priorities. NTs tend to be high achievers in academic work and generally approach their learning through seeking out and understanding principles. A logical presentation of learning materials is apt to appeal to an NT. He usually enjoys the lecture method of instruction, if well done, and may not always find discussion methods useful. In fact, at times he can be somewhat impatient and rude in rejecting the ideas and opinions of others, especially those he views as being beneath him intellectually. Because it is important to the NT that others see him as competent, he can be affected negatively by report cards. Once he has achieved high grades, he may come to believe himself incompetent if ever after he does not continue to receive straight A's. Pursuit of this kind of reward is obviously unreasonable and may be unwise, for the NT may never find time for activities other than study. An NT can be intellectually a big fish in a little high school pond. When he enrolls in college, he finds competition of a different sort. At this point, the NT may react by giving up his scholastic efforts, or by giving only erratic attention to a few studies, perhaps succeeding brilliantly in some and ignominiously, and failing others. If parents and teachers have provided for a sufficient number and variety of experiences for the NT, some of which are not his forte, this is not as likely to happen, for the NT has the background to place what may be threatening competition in an accepting perspective. Family rituals and ceremonials are usually not appealing to the INT child, since he requires reasons for doing things and perhaps needs help in understanding that rituals and ceremonies are important events for other people. The NT may be erratic about the way he maintains his room and clothes. He may at one time be very organized, and at another let dust and chaos escape his notice. Probably, the frequent condition of his room is one of apparent disorder. But the NT child will be likely to know where each and every treasure is placed. He is apt to have extensive collections: rocks, animal artifacts, coins, stamps, butterflies, and the like. Anything which can be collected and which requires a technical documentation and classification is apt to have appeal for the NT child. The NT likes to be given content or directions only once and becomes impatient with repetition, unlike the SJ learner, who enjoys being given detailed directions and usually does not object to repeated content. The SP, on the other hand, is not apt to pay much attention to directions, whether clear or not. At the very least, he redefines the task before complying. The NF tends to erase distinctions in directions and probably should be given both oral and written directions. The NT learner needs to receive feedback on the quality of their work, and they usually define quality as coherence and efficiency. He can be directed towards independent study and usually counted on to pursue these efforts with little or no encouragement over additional direction from the teacher or parent. He is very likely to enjoy developing his vocabulary and may at times use this expanded vocabulary as a debate weapon with others. Intolerance of others' difficulty with complexity is often a characteristic of the NT, both child and adult, and helping the NT child understand the impact of this attitude can be a contribution which a parent or teacher should make. And that's the end of that one. We're still reading the Please Understand Me Character and Temperament Types by David Kiersey and Marilyn Bates. I appreciate you. Thank you for being with me and listening and watching as our fog lifted out. The next and final one is the Apollonian, the Intuitive Feeling Style in Childhood, the NF. So I've read this is the 4 temperaments in children. Thank you.